Okay, so we're going to talk about clipping masks, blend modes as opposed to blends, and knockout groups, which is a really cool trick. So we're going to work with a photo placed into Illustrator. So file place, I'm going to pick this photo and place it. The great thing about placed images is that they are linked to their original. So you could change this image in Photoshop and save it, and then it would update here in Illustrator. The negative to it, like I was saying in a previous video, is that if you're working on an external drive or a USB drive and you're moving files around in between folders, Illustrator is going to be looking for this file wherever you placed it from. So if you placed it from a folder on your desktop at home and then put it onto a USB drive and then open it up at school, Illustrator is going to be looking at your desktop at home and not be able to find it because it's not there. So, because you're not on your home computer. So in that case, if you're moving stuff around a lot, you would want to embed it. So you can do that here in the properties and embed. And then once it's embedded, it's part of this Illustrator file and you don't have to worry about it being linked that way. So we can image trace this. You don't have to image trace it, but just to keep things vector, we can. So window, if you don't see the image trace, just make sure that's checked. I'm over here in the image trace, and for a photo, you can do the high fidelity photo. And you of course want the preview on. You can make all kinds of adjustments. Okay, so then you want to press expand, which is over here in the properties. It's also up here if you don't have properties open. And then that, has vectorized this. You can ungroup it, but for this, we probably want to keep it grouped or we'll go crazy. So a clipping mask is, you can really make with any shape. Let me just show you really quickly. I can do a circle, draw on top here, and I have a circle, and I can just give it a stroke, no fill. And then I can select the circle, so I'm in V, my selection. I have the circle selected already. I can just hold Shift to select my photo in the back, and I can right click and make clipping mask. And now this circle is we're just seeing what's in the circle, but we can make adjustments. The original photo is still there. So we can make adjustments to the circle. If I open it up here, let me make this bigger again. So here's this clip group. Sorry, I have another one open from earlier. So when you make a clipping mask, it creates a clip group. See right here in the circle is my clip group. Here's the ellipse, so I can just target it and just have that ellipse selected. And then you can see I can see more of the photo or less of the photo, depending on what I want. And we can see when I'm over here, it's still selecting part of the photo. So all of the information from that photo still exists, which is beneficial because we haven't deleted it and we can still make a lot of changes. But we want to make a more complicated clip group. So I'm going to Control Z to get out of here. And we can do that with the pen tool. So I'm just going to take the pen tool and I'm going to start drawing, and I want to remove the sky from here. So I'm just clicking. And the nice thing when you have stuff expanded is you can kind of intersect with the anchor points that are in your image. So you can get the highest and lowest points and make your path for your clipping mask look really great. So that's another benefit to expanding it, doing an image trace and expanding, is that you can kind of connect with the points that are in there. Okay, so I have made one already, so you don't have to watch me do this. So let me get rid of this. And by the magic of television, I have this over here. Let me zoom in. So I have this path that I've created, right? I have this path that I created with the pen tool. I have my photo, I have both selected, and I'm right clicking and I'm making a clipping mask. And so that automatically puts these into this clip group here in my layers. Close symbols out. So I have the path that I can affect, and I have my image, which is broken up into all these million little pieces from expanding it. So these exist together in this group. If you ever want to get rid of a clipping mask, you can just right click and release clipping masks, and then it goes back. So you always have the option to get rid of it. So now that we have this clipping group set up, we can add things into it like gradients. So I'm gonna just create a radial gradient here with a rectangle tool, and I'm gonna make it bigger than the shape I want to fill it in. And so if you come up into your swatches, we have the gradient window opened, and I had gradient checked already, which is why it filled with the gradient. But we can add gradients here in the swatches panel, open swatch library, and just go to gradients. The vignettes are nice, and you can just drag them, you know, ones you want to use into your swatches so you can use them over and over again. And you can just click on them from here too. And so this is like a sepia vignette for like an old-timey photo. So you can adjust it in the gradient window here once you have one that you like. And you can, I think you guys have learned this before, so I'll just go quickly through that. Now that we have this gradient, I'm gonna press V and I'm gonna move it to make sure it covers my object. And I can take it from its, I have my layer open, and here is the gradient that I created, and I can drag it into my clip group. Then, you know, this is obviously too bright, so we can come into the transparency window. Let me get that out here. If you don't see it, you just do window transparency. And we can, of course, change the opacity, but we can also change the blend modes. Now the blend modes, if you use Photoshop, you'll be familiar with. And so we can do a blend mode and change the opacity. If you're not familiar with blend modes, I'm going to put this on canvas, and this explains what each different blend mode does. It's basically blending the colors. So the original color of the selected object or group or whatever you have selected with the base color, whatever is underneath it. So there needs to be something underneath it. And the resulting color is obviously a blend. And the blend modes, which you access here, are different than blends. Remember we made, let me just show you really quickly. Okay, I'm gonna make this a solid color. So I'm just gonna show you what the blend is. So I'm making a star. I'm in the move tool, I'm holding Alt, and I'm just dragging out another copy. And then I'm gonna make this a different color. And I'm gonna select both, and I'm gonna do object, blend. We can do the blend options. Remember we did this, the specified steps, and you know, you can do 100 or however many, and then object, blend, make. So this is a blend, which is very different than the blend modes. Not very different, but it's a different thing. So just don't get confused between blend modes and blends. You can create blends, you can make them into symbols, you can use them for highlights and shading and all kinds of stuff. And then blend modes are blending the different colors that exist with the background and whatever object you have selected. Okay, so you're gonna get this looking great. And if you wanna affect this transparency of the gradient you just made, you can click on its target here, and then you have the different gradient options, and you can lower the opacity and really make that look awesome. Okay, so just how to see how it works with things in the background. So I just have a big gradient in the background, and I'm selected here on this clip group. And now we can see I had only had the blend mode on the rectangle here, which was my sepia vignette. But now if I click on the whole entire clip group, there's no blending mode here. So I can make this luminosity is kind of a cool one for this. Okay, so there's some other fun things you can do with blend modes with text too. So I've created two layers of text, one called front in the front and one called behind, which I've layered here in my layers panel with the front on top and the behind underneath the clipping group. And so I'm on the front layer and I'm clicked on it. And another place you can access this transparency is up here. By clicking on opacity, you can get to that transparency panel. And so I'm gonna make this into difference. And what the difference does is it inverts everything that's behind this text. So it's just inverting the color, just doing the opposite color. And we can move this, let me unlock this guy. We can move it all around and see how that's gonna look. Now sometimes it can be a little too intense for what you're going for, but you might still want to see the image texture behind the text or any of these things that are happening, but maybe the color just is a little too much. So what we have to do is we have to come and target the layer with this little circle and then come into your appearance panel, which you can get to up at the window, appearance. And we're going to add a new fill. That's down here at the bottom. It's the center icon. And I'm going to make it a gray color. And what's awesome about this is that you can apply blend modes to each of these fills. You can make multiple fills. Remember, we've done that already. And you can apply blend modes to each of them. So I'm going to close this and open it. So you can see that the fill layer needs to be open. And then I click on opacity here. And then I press saturate, and that will make it all black and white in there. So you can really do a lot with that. And then you could select on both of these and make that a clipping mask. So then you could just have the text with the image within it, which is a really cool effect. I'm going to Control Z a couple times and let me redo blend mode. Okay, so we have that there. And next I'm going to show you a knockout group. So I'm going to use this text behind. I'm in the behind layer and I'm going to create like a rectangle around the text just in case you had some kind of, you know, design element, and I'm going to make it just the stroke with white. So I've created this little design element. You know, if you're doing some kind of layout, and I'm gonna bring this over here. And if I have blend modes on my image, so let's say I have this layer as multiply, then something that can happen is we can see these lines through the photo. So since we can see all these lines behind the photos, if you have a lot of blend modes on your images or any objects, you might want to get rid of that because that's kind of sloppy looking. So a way to do that, you could come in with the scissors tool and delete all the stuff, but that's super time consuming. Another way to do it is with that knockout groups. The transparency panel, so that's here. Sometimes it just looks like this and you think you don't have enough options, but you just click on these arrows here to get all your options open. So in order to get rid of this white line, we need to be in the layer that the text and the white line are in. They all have to exist in one layer for this knockout group to work. So they're all in one layer. I'm making a rectangle, which is going to attempt to cover this line. And I'm gonna make that rectangle black. And I'm gonna just lower the opacity on that rectangle so you can kind of see what's happening while it's happening, so we can still see the line through. Okay, this is an important step that I often forget. So you need to target select the entire layer, not just one of the parts of this layer, the whole thing. So this is the whole layer with the text, the rectangle, everything in it. So I target select the whole thing, and then you can see that like the knockout group has a little minus sign in it or a dash, and that means it can be activated. So I'm gonna just check it. And now we can see, I'm gonna zoom in, that white is gone. And if we click on the rectangle here, that black rectangle that I made, we can turn the opacity all the way down. And so that white line disappears, and you can move this to reveal or hide it. So this is another dynamic tool that you can use because you can be always making adjustments. But that doesn't really work for the text that's up here. So I am going to show you another thing that you can do with the clipping mask that we made for the image. So I'm in the image, my image layer, and I have this clipping path, right, that I made with the pen tool. So I need to be on this clipping path, and I'm targeting it. I'm on the clipping path of the mountains that I made with the pen tool. I've targeted it, and I'm doing copy, Control C, Control F to paste in front. And why we want paste in front is because it's gonna paste it into exactly the same spot. If we just did a copy and paste, remember, it'd be like skewed off to the side. So now I'm gonna take this path and I'm just gonna drag it into my group here. But nothing happens because I need to target on this and I need to fill it. I need to fill it with black. Now it's all black, but we can turn the opacity down to 0, and you can see that covered up everything here. So that looks much better, and then you can just delete that black rectangle to give yourself a clean look. And let me show you that you can now move. I can select this stuff and you can move it all around, but anytime it goes behind that knockout group that we made, it is disappeared. So that's a really clean way to do it, to copy and paste that clipping path. And I think you can imagine a lot of things you can do by copying and pasting that clipping path and making different kind of masks and knockout groups, and you can really do some awesome stuff.